Like right now I'm in a building, it's at least a $123 million building, but like the internet is sporadic at best. And so a great example of poor planning and poor situational awareness, which easily could have been prevented. But like something that came up, what I was thinking about was in Iraq. And when we go over there and we went out there, our mission was to identify the enemy, take out their logistics or supplies. And then when we were doing that, then try to identify which tribes were friendly and which ones could be enemies. And that could change it at the switch of a hand. So the thing is kind of where a lot of people don't understand when we were out there is that different standards, different ideas, different levels, even different perspectives based off of hundreds or thousands of years of their life. And so it's like, well, what does that mean? One of the problems that we ended up having out there was that we as Americans have a pretty privileged and I would even argue a great life in a lifestyle with freedom in the forefront. And so if we are like a 10 out of a 10 for freedom, or 9 out of 10, and over there it's more about other things, maybe it's service to Allah, or maybe it's family mindset, or wherever their affiliation is at, that freedom for them, they may see it different. They're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm less free for this period of time, but it'll pass and then I'll be more free. So if they're more adaptable to change, or they're more open to change, then in those situations, if somebody takes over, whether it's a dictator, it may be bad sometimes, but then to them, how they identify bad may not be as bad as we identify bad. We might be like, oh, that's an outrage. We absolutely cannot take this as unacceptable. And for them, they're like, well, that's life, or inshallah, as God wills it. And from that's a mindset. So when you have two different mindsets and you try to win the hearts and minds of a different people, different race, different cultures, you have to take that into consideration. You have to take that into your strategy and your plan, because that will let you know where your alliances truly are at and how strong they really are.
We are talking about how a nation makes mistake as a collective, but how do you think we are also making the same mistakes in our own life? And I know we are making in so many ways, but I would like you to take the lead and guide us.
Okay, very good question. So the thing is that we as humans, we're built more for survival than for success. And so the average humans has these astronomical amount of biases and shortcuts that make up our human nature. I'll give you an example. When it comes to jealousy, we generally have that ingrained as even as a toddler. We could say that jealousy is one of those emotions that's in our system. I mean, it may establish dominance. It may have some advantages, but most of the time it's just unchanneled energy. If it doesn't benefit us in any real way and it's taxing on our emotions, and then generally, for the most part, it adds a negative value onto things, then is that for success? And it's like, no. Does that contribute to success? Not really. It can destabilize you, which is a setback. So then if you think about that, it's like, oh, wait a minute now. I'm jealous and I'm not doing anything about it, and I've lived my whole entire life with it. Then all I did was sustain a problem, a human problem. The thing is like, if we've had jealousy for this long and it comes to us as even toddlers, then why have we not as a collective whole worked on that? Why is it that we haven't talked about it, discussed it? Why is it that we got so divided and we don't deal with it and we don't work with it? Well, the real reason is because we didn't put our attention on it. We don't put enough of our attention on it, and we don't stay consistent with it, persistent, and then we don't hold accountability to that. We could have had this conversation 5,000 years ago, and you know what? We won't be alive, but we could have this conversation about 2,000 years in the future from now, because it doesn't seem that people care enough about this. And then also pressure. A lot of people don't like pressure, a state of apathy of, it's not my problem, it's not my business. I'm like, it's not your problem, it's not your business until it's on your doorstep. Then all of a sudden, you want to be, oh, well, look at me, I'm the victim. It's like, no, you are an inactive participant who indirectly, in a way, no matter how you look at it, allowed this to happen by not doing anything. And the thing is that that's a blanket that could cover anything. It's like you want to escape from accountability as an individual and as a community and as a culture and as a state and as a country. But the thing is that just people, they are not doing what it takes. I'm not really religious, I'm more spiritual, but one saying I do remember in the Bible, it had a little story of God and Cain having a conversation, and God asked, where is your brother? And then Cain says, like, how should I know? Am I his keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? There's so many interpretations of that, but long story short, I always saw that as literal. Am I my brother's keeper? But back then, supposedly it meant slave master or something like that. But for me, I always saw that I am my brother's keeper, not in a slave keeper sense, but more along the lines of that, hey, it is my job to correct somebody when I see wrong. Like, what kind of person are we? What kind of community are we to allow wrong to happen? But we are, and we do. In politics, it's absolutely, it's just overwhelming. But then also, the problem is that everybody loves to point the finger, but the truth is that they need to be pointing at themselves, because these problems all require people to happen. We have another saying in the military is that something like this, but it's like, the only thing you need for bad and evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. And that's relatively true. But also you can have mediocre people do nothing. And so it's just like, when is this ever going to end? And it only ends when we have more awareness, or we care more, or, when we do more. Even if we create the consequences and made them harsher, what ends up happening is that people become okay with the consequences. Like, yeah, okay, fine. I'm going to go kill that person. Cool. I'll go to jail for whatever. This is cyclical, and so that's kind of like how these things work. It's like, man, you want to talk about a broken cycle, sustaining a broken cycle, but this is how it is. And so it's like, wait a minute, Rich, what's this got to do with like myself, my business, my family, my life? It's like, well, it's like, how many of us are gonna, chase the instant gratification, whether it's TV or sports or the next best thing. And so then it's like, well, are we ever gonna want to get better? Most of the time, they're gonna take the path of least resistance. And so kind of the difficult lesson with Stoicism is that the obstacle is the way. And I'm not saying everybody has to be stoic, but let me tell you, man, that is a tough burden, but it's a good burden. It's a really good burden. And so, people are like, oh, well, how come behavioral health, mental health, how come they're not changing? It's like, do you know how long it takes to go to school? And then also, by the way, let me tell you, just because you take all that school and all that training doesn't mean you're a great person. It's like, how many marriage and family therapists have a messed up relationship? It's like, shouldn't you know all this already? And even as human nature, I've been messed up too, but I knew what was happening. I knew what was going to come. I knew the consequences, and I was fighting it and trying to slow it down and stop it. And it happened anyway. And so it's kind of like, well, how could we have changed that? It's like, well, maybe if I was trained a little bit earlier, a little bit of a more modified exposure therapy. But I mean, that's a lot of training, a lot of school, and a lot of stuff that somebody has to go through just to tell somebody else, hey, I think it's a bad idea and you shouldn't do that. And in America, we also allow them the freedom to mess their own lives up, which I do not agree with. It's like, well, if you can sometimes slow down or help people stay out of their own way, then things would get better, because sometimes I would say they don't learn. It's like, oh, okay, if they learned, then they would only make the mistake a couple times. But sometimes people have to learn a lot of times, a lot. And it's like, oh, well, strange, you're back in the cycle because you keep making the same mistake. How many times are you going to keep making the same mistake? But then again, it goes back to human nature. We're meant for survival. If most humans are meant for survival and not success, then, we become victims of our own circumstance and of our own character. That's a really difficult thing, but that's only like 1/6 of the battle. Next is you have to care. And then next I have an equation of how to resolve it, step by step by step by step. But to change, it is a beast.